Actually, that's sci-fi. Dark bleatings, everyone. I'm here with something movie-ish for you today. So I used to get into this, I say argument, it was like a recurring argument that I had with people back when I was single. And I learned my lesson about just going on a date and just hoping the guy would be nice. And I had like this kind of vetting process after a while. And the vetting process would go something like, hey, what kind of films do you like? And then they'd tell me, and then they'd ask me, and I'd be like, oh, I love horror films. And then they'd say, oh, really? What's your favorite horror film? And then I would say, oh, I really like Alien. That's my favorite. And then they'd go, well, actually, Alien is sci-fi. And it used to really get on my nerves because things can be more than one genre, and arguing with somebody that's forcing me to try to justify why I think Alien, about a killing machine, perfect organism, human killing machine, is a horror film. You know, it's set in space, you're in an enclosed environment, something is stalking and killing the entire crew. You are no physical match for it, you're not even a psychological match for it. They're smart, they're organized, they're fast, they put people in freaking cocoons and then their babies burst out of your chest. Like, if that isn't horror, I don't know what is. But I slightly digress. So what I thought might be fun is to make my top 10 sci-fi horror movies, and I haven't watched a lot of recent films. Oh god, I've forgotten one. Oh man, I'll do it as an honourable mention. Okay, so obviously you're going to know what the number one is, but I'm going to slot the honourable mention in next to it so that there's still a surprise. Okay, so yeah, most of my taste is sort of in films of decades past, but I honestly think that there was a golden era of sci-fi horror where sci-fi was kind of used as a backdrop a lot of the time, and maybe it wasn't the main focus, although some of the films there very much is a focus. So this is in order, and maybe I've missed something, and if I have, let me know in the comments, because it could just be that I've somehow forgotten it, or it didn't quite hit my top 10, but I would love to know what your favourites are, especially if there are things in there that I haven't seen, and then I can add them to my watch list. So, in number 10, and people regularly made fun of me for this one when I brought it up, is The Cell. Yes, The Cell, the one starring Jennifer Lopez. As sci-fi horror goes, so the balance of sci-fi and horror, I would say that's 50-50. The story is about a serial killer, and I feel like this was like at least loosely inspired on Silence of the Lambs, just because of this aspect. But they have a serial killer. They know that he doesn't generally kill his victims immediately. There's a missing woman. They hope that there is still time to find her, but they've caught the killer and he's now in a coma, so they're not going to get any information from him. So yeah, it's kind of like a cop trying to track down where this woman is before she dies. And then the sci-fi element comes in where there is I think she's a psychiatrist or psychologist, I'll say psychiatrist. She's a specialist anyway, played by Jennifer Lopez, and they've got this new technology where they can like strap themselves in on these little beds with all these things, and then they can sort of like connect and go into the mind of the patient, and that way the therapist can firsthand like watch the memories and things that caused the trauma. So this is what ends up happening. Jennifer Lopez goes into the mind of this killer to try to find information about the whereabouts of this woman, the missing woman, and obviously because she's coming at this from a sort of like therapy angle, she's also like learning about the guy. The thing that I love, so like this is all like the sci-fi stuff. The other element of the horror for this, which is why I really like the setup, I like that little sort of like medical sci-fi element. I thought that that was a good idea. The thing that really elevates it in the horror category for me is that because we've gone into the mind of someone who is very disturbed, if this film was made now, I feel like they would just fill the landscape of this guy's mind with like crazy CGI, or they'd put him in space for some reason and they'd just be floating around in these sort of like voids of nothingness. I feel like that's how they would depict this now, but because we're going, you know, a few decades back, most of this stuff was like practically built sets. I mean, there are some special effects in there, but they've built sets, and the costuming was really elaborate, and so like everything that they created to represent this guy's mind, like everything is disturbing as fuck. It's like, it's scary, and I just feel like I really appreciate sort of the practical elements of it, because visually it's a masterpiece. Like the use of the colors they've used, the shapes, like the costuming was like a really big one for me. There was just, everything felt like there was meaning behind it, like something like now that I'm saying that, it reminds me of the amount of detail that Ari Aster puts into the background of his stuff, but this was very much at the forefront. So yeah, I still stand by The Cell. I think it's a good horror film. I think that the sci-fi is really good, and I thought it was scary. Number 9, this is one from my youth. I remember seeing this with my cousin. We were watching the Sci-Fi channel late at night. This is Cube, and I know this probably has like a cult following by now, unless I'm just an island out here and I'm the only person who liked Cube. And there were sequels and stuff, but I never bothered watching them. But this is about a group of people who like wake up individually, or some of them wake up together in these square rooms. And they don't remember how they got in there, they don't know why they're in there, but there are doors, and they're trying to find their way out of the cube, basically. But a lot of the rooms are booby trapped. So this is kind of like, you know, maybe if you haven't seen this and you're a fan of like the Saw franchise or something, you might enjoy this. So obviously the sci-fi element here is in the cube itself, sort of like the engineering and the construction. I'm not, it's not a stretch that it's in the sci-fi horror category. I saw this on the Sci-Fi channel. But yeah, this is kind of like, I don't want to say any more about like the cube itself, but that, because it will spoil a plot point that comes up like fairly far into the film. But yeah, the engineering of this, the cube, and like its purpose and everything, very much in sort of like sci-fi territory here. We couldn't do this now, I don't think. And then obviously the horror of this is, you know, being trapped inside something that you don't understand, and you don't, you know, you can move through these rooms, but you don't know if you're any closer to getting out. You don't know where the end is, you don't know how big this thing is. And obviously there is the threat of death at all times in every room you enter, and then you're with a bunch of strangers on top of it. You don't know who you can trust, and yeah, it's just like a really great sort of like claustrophobic film, one of those ones that gets your mind working, like how would you get out of this. It's just such a fun film. I didn't write down the years that these came out, but I'm gonna say that I think Cube must have been late 90s, early 2000s at the very most, because I saw this and it hadn't been out too long when it came on the TV. So I saw it as a teenager. So like if you see something that's like Cube from 2012, that's not the one. You need to go further back. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one and I would love to watch it again. Number 8, this is one that prospective dates used to argue with me about as well, because they go, well, actually, that's an action film. And they say that because Arnold Schwarzenegger's in it and there is action. But it's Predator. Anyone arguing with me that this isn't a horror film, I just won't have it. It's about a group of people who are, you know, they're military. They are exceptionally capable of taking care of themselves, especially in combat situations, and they're getting picked off. This is basically an alien slasher film set in a jungle. It's a horror film, and obviously Predator is a creature not of the natural world as we know it, but it's not of the supernatural world, so that's why I say alien. It's not anything that we've ever come up against, let's say that. So there is a sci-fi element, because where did this dude come from? And I recommended this to somebody that's about a bit more than 10 years younger than me, my friend's girlfriend, and she's really cool, and she'd never seen it, and I recommended it to her, and then the next time I saw her she said that it was fine, but she didn't really like it too much because it's just so bro, and that like there's only one woman and the woman's kind of useless. And I was like, I don't know if I'm like resisting that critique, because I'm just seeing it through the lens of like nostalgia, and it was like of its time and stuff, and it is a bro film. There's no denying, Dylan, you son of a bitch, this is a bro movie, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it for being a bro movie. It's just the kind of movie it is. I absolutely love it. Predator is one, like, again, like, I feel obviously there was some special effects used because the Predator has some abilities, but I think it holds up really well. It's really, really fun to watch. So yeah, that's in my favorites. Number 7, this is newer, but this is probably still like a decade old by now, because I got no grasp of like how long ago some things happened. But it's Breitburn. So this is the premise of this, I think, was like, what if Superman was evil? So this is about a couple that really want to have a child, and it's just not happening for them. And then a meteor or something crash lands on their property, much like Superman when, you know, he crash lands in a little pod, and there's a little baby in there, and they're like, oh, okay, well, this is our baby now. And the baby, as he grows, has some powers, and, you know, he's a volatile pre-adolescent kid. I think that is the stuff of nightmares. Obviously the sci-fi element is that he's come from space and we're not sure what he is, and the horror element is these parents getting everything they thought they wanted, and then it is just twisted in the most horrible way possible. I really enjoy stories about kids that are evil and stuff, but that trope has got quite tired for me, because usually the way that we see that represented, it's always creepy little girls in 90s and they're possessed or something, or like creepy little girls and a ghost is talking to them and they're saying weird things, and that's always how it's depicted. I found it really refreshing that we didn't go with a supernatural angle on this one, and that this felt like quite a human story, and that's where all the horror lies. So like, it's just really worth your time. It's like really fast paced. It's like, it's got a really good blend of like all of these elements that it's drawing on, and I loved it. Number 6, we're going back like 100 years on this one almost. I can't remember the exact year it came out, but I think it's a long time ago. It's The Curse of Frankenstein. I really, really liked it. This is the one with Peter Cushing, and this was one of the first like really early horror films that I ever watched. But I didn't watch these early horror films when I was younger. I recently, like in the last decade, went back and started watching some of the classics that have informed horror cinema as we know it now, and it's less than an hour long, because films did not used to be over an hour typically back in those days, and it's just so like rich with like sets and props, and obviously this is sci-fi horror, it's Frankenstein, but there's this scene when he's in his lab and he's got like all these tubes and just bubbling chemicals and stuff, and there was just something so like magical about this for me. I don't know why I loved it so much. I guess because they had fewer possibilities for creating effects back in this age of cinema, that the focus was very much on the story and the storytelling, and I do think that the quality of the storytelling is really high, and the way that they represent everything, like so much thought's gone into the details that they can control and manipulate. So I absolutely loved it. It's a god, what a classic. It's just a wonderful film to watch. Number 5, we're in my top 5 now, and I actually struggled a little bit. The order of this, apart from what's in the number 1 spot, and I already spoiled that, has shifted around quite a bit. But it's The Fly, and it's the Jeff Goldblum one. There is the Fly with Jeff Goldblum is a remake of an earlier one. And I would say that this leans, there's more emphasis on the sci-fi in this one than the horror, but I still think the mix is really good, and it's both. If you haven't seen this, it's wonderful. What a great film. It's about a scientist, and he's working on a teleportation is kind of his thing. He's got these chambers, and he uses himself as a test subject, and something goes awry. And it's basically, it reminds me a little bit of Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, if you've read that, just about the changes that happen to a man and the process of not just physically changing and how jarring and shocking that is for you and the people around you that care about you, but it's very much about like losing your sense of self and morphing into other things. And it's just, yeah, it's a great film. It's a really, really great film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I'm going to say that about everything on this list, but like The Fly is absolute gold for sci-fi horror. It's just one of the best. Number 4, now this was one I shifted around because this was in my number 2 spot for as long as I can remember, but when I actually sat and thought about it really seriously when I made this list, by the way, I was thinking about like how much joy I felt at the thought of each of these films, and they were a couple above it, so it's shifted. So number 4 is The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing, starring Kurt Russell and a bunch of other great cast members. If you haven't seen The Thing, I highly recommend it. It's, again, it's an absolute feat of sci-fi horror. It's about a group of men, I think they're scientists or researchers of some kind, but they're in the Antarctic, I think. Yeah, the Antarctic. I always get it mixed up with somewhere else. The Antarctic. And they've got like sleigh dogs. They're very cut off from everybody. Blah de blah de blah, and then something gets into the base, and it's something that can imitate anything and anyone, and so the whole film is them not knowing if the thing that's there is taking, like, is one of them, if it's like one of the dogs, if it's like lurking somewhere in the periphery and they don't know where it is. And so obviously the sci-fi element of it is the creature, it is the thing. It might be of this earth, it might not be of this earth. I won't spoil it for you, but and obviously the horror aspect comes into being cut off in a not only a really isolated location where they can't just, you know, run down the road and there's a whole town of people to help them. They're very isolated, but they're isolated in really extreme weather, so there's like, they're dealing with like the landscape and the weather as well as elements that could kill them on top of what's already happening. And then we've got like this sort of breakdown in trust between everyone. The other fun thing about The Thing is sort of the discourse that still surrounds it to this day about the ending. Obviously I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there are questions about the ending that people are still asking, and it's just such a fun film to think about, talk about, speculate on, and to watch, most importantly. I even managed to impress my super hard to impress husband with this film. He dislikes more than I do. He taps out of almost everything, so I was really, really happy that we got to the end of this one and he really liked it, because if he didn't, I mean, I don't want to be like really dramatic or anything, but probably divorce. Number 3, I love this film so much, and it is The Mist, based on the Stephen King novella, and Frank Darabont made this. Greg Nicotero did the special effects. The cast, we've got Thomas Jane, who's in a few Stephen King adaptations, and I generally really like him, but you might remember the first thing I ever saw him in was I think it's called The Sweetest Thing, that film with Cameron Diaz and oh god, Lady from Anchorman, Veronica, I can't remember her name, it'll come back to me 3 videos from now, I'll just yell her name 3 videos from now. But yeah, Christina Applegate, yeah, anyway, The Mist. And then so we've got Thomas Jane, and I can't remember the name of the kid who played his son, but he was great. And then we've got that guy that everyone likes, I can't remember his name, but he's the one, you know, that real, oh no, he's that guy. And then we've got Will Sadler is in this. I don't know why I love William Sadler as much as I do, but I just do. And then we've got some Walking Dead staples. We've got Jeffrey DeMunn, who played Dale. We've got Laurie Holden, that played Andrea. We've even got a little bit part from Melissa McBride here. Like, this cast is just stacked. Everyone in this film was great. This is one of the most faithful Stephen Adams King. What did I just say? This is one of the most faithful Stephen King adaptations. I do think that Frank Darabont is the king of adapting things. He also did The Green Mile with Shawshank Redemption. He adapted the first few seasons of The Walking Dead from the comics. Like, he is this is his forte, Frank Darabont. Like, he knows, like, he really understands the material he's working with, what the story's about, why people like it, and what they want to see when they see a screen version. I just think that Frank Darabont probably should do the adaptations of everything and anything that we like that are books. But yeah, sorry, I haven't even told you about the story. So if you haven't seen this, this is about a group of people basically trapped in a small supermarket in the US when a really weird, there's like a huge storm the night before, and then this really, really thick, weird mist rolls through the town, and there's stuff in the mist. So I can't really explain the sci-fi aspect to you without spoiling bits of things as they come up in the plot, but just trust me, it's sci-fi. And then the horror, obviously, we've got group of people trapped together. Yeah, being trapped like a rat in a cage is bad, and then the way that the group kind of disintegrates and starts kind of getting hysterical is just so well done. Like, we've got these really like subtle little like bits, like little event, I say little, very big to the characters they're happening to, but like we've got stuff that's like some characters see that everyone else in the supermarket isn't even privy to. So there are people arguing about what's going on. Nobody knows like really where to look. There's one like super religious woman that's kind of known as the town nut, but then as time goes on, people start looking to her for the answers, and she's not somebody that you want to be on the bad side of if she gets a following. So like there are just so many like different areas of horror for this film. I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it but you've only seen the colour version, I recommend getting the black and white version on DVD or maybe it's on Blu-ray as well. I don't know, I'm old, I have DVDs. Frank Darabont originally wanted to release this in black and white, but the production company said no one these days is going to watch a black and white film, but he really wanted to give it that sort of like B-movie sort of like quality. The only drawback I got of this film is that unlike the others, there is some CGI that just hasn't really held up very well over time, and to be honest, it wasn't great when it was released. That is because the production company wanted Frank Darabont to change his ending, and they told him they would give him a lot more money if he changed his ending, and he said no for the sake of artistic integrity, and he just made the film on a much lower budget than he could have done it on, and I have mad respect for that. But if you watch it in black and white, the effects do not, like the stuff that doesn't look quite right in the colour version, it's just not as jarring in the black and white one. Like, I think that that's maybe part of why he wanted to release it that way initially, because it just it fits in black and white. So I wholeheartedly recommend watching the black and white version. It's a slightly different cinematic experience. I think they're both great though. Like, you're there for the story more than anything else, and yeah, it's just wonderful. Okay, number 2, I've got 2 films here. They're joint. And this one gets left off lists like this all the time because I think that people just forget about it. But it's Critters and Critters 2. Now, Critters came out in the 80s, and I'm an 80s baby, and even though I wasn't old enough to... I was born in 86, so obviously I wasn't old enough to watch it when it was originally released, but this was one of the few horror films that my mum allowed me to watch when I was a kid, and I am still to this day enamored with it. In fact, I'm going to do a Critters rewatch probably around Halloween, I think, and I prefer Critters 1 to Critters 2, but I love Critters 2 as well. They're both so good. So if you are not privileged enough to have yet seen the glory of Critters, let me tell you, oh my god, I'm way more excited to talk about this than I thought I was going to be. So, oh god, okay, so Critters is one of the first really good examples that I can ever remember seeing of horror film that infuses a bit of comedy, but we're not talking like Shaun of the Dead level comedy here. We are talking like, this is a straight up horror film, but the comedy comes from the critters a little bit. There are some like kind of like subtle jokes in how they frame things. The critters have a language they speak to each other in, and they use like vulgar language and swearing and things like that, little things like that. But everyone in the cast is playing this like totally straight, so at no point does the comedy kind of like undercut the severity of what's going on or the stakes or anything like that. It's just like a few things that'll like make you laugh here and there. But this is about, I think it's Kansas, I'm not 100% sure. I always thought it was Kansas if it isn't, when I was a kid. But this is about like a little American town that becomes, they're basically attacked by a crashed alien ship, and the aliens in question are the critters, and they're these little like toothy spiky balls, and you know, if they chomp you, you're dead. Their teeth are really sharp, and they shoot these like really sharp spines, and the spine has a toxin, and it can like render you unconscious, and da 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 da. So, and the family and our main character is a teenage boy who's kind of a bit of a rebel. He's a bit of a tearaway, and the critters crash like somewhere close to the house. So basically most of the film takes place around this family and the house, and them sort of just getting like, you know, they're at the mercy of critters, and they're barricading themselves in, and they're, you know, trying to fight them and things like that. It's just so much fun. It's just such a fun concept. And then there's another element. There's a reason why the critters crash landed here, and that is a whole other thing. So obviously the sci-fi stuff is coming in. Like, we've got various space alien type things going on here, but like somehow, even though these little critter balls are just grinning balls of evil, like somehow it's not like silly when you actually get into the narrative. It's not like too camp, if that's what, like, you know, some of like the older sci-fi stuff has kind of like a camp quality to it that like dissolve some of the horror, but this, like, I don't know, they just struck the balance so well. And then Critters 2, they're back. This is directed by Mick Garris, who's another person who adapts a lot of Stephen King, and I think that his adaptations are really underrated because he never gets like the budget he deserves on these things. But yes, just shout out to Mick Garris and the work of the Stephen King adaptations of Mick Garris. Like, I'm a big fan, and he also did like Hocus Pocus and stuff. Like, he's a good filmmaker. Anyway, sorry. So Mick Garris did this one. I'll go off on a slight tangent about Mick Garris in a second, actually, as well. So Mick Garris did this one, and the critters are back. Bradley, who's the teenager, the main character from the first one, is a bit older now, and kind of like gets wind that some weird things are happening in town again. And they just went a bit more like destructive. I guess it's the same kind of basic story, that the critters are back. Havoc is being wrought, but they went bigger. They went a bit bigger. Part of it takes place over Easter. The scenes, like the death scenes and the horror scenes, are just impeccable. Like, everything is like really like, oh my god, how horrifying, but also how fun to watch. And then giant critter ball is all I'm gonna say, but it's honestly like they upped the ante, and like they're both critters films have got these really great like critter montages where the critters are just feasting on everything, because that's like their MO. Like they're hungry little fellas and they just want to eat everything. But they like these films are just so much fun, and like, oh, I need to calm down. No, I'm not gonna calm down. I love for Critters and Critters 2, like, as you can see, I can't, like, this is me trying to be a bit restrained, because you know, my husband's home and he's gonna think I'm a lunatic if he hears my tone and doesn't know what I'm talking about, or even if he does know what I'm talking about, he's gonna think I've gone unhinged about Critters and Critters 2. But I started going to book conventions, like kind of like author events, like a few years ago, and my first ever one was called ChillerCon, and it was in Scarborough, I think, and one of the guests of honour was Mick Garris, and I just, like, you know, flew over from LA to be there. And I was really shy when I went to this convention. I'd never gone to like an author one before, so I went with my friend, but I hadn't really met people in person. I didn't know anyone, and they're really nice social events, but I was very like intimidated to be there. And unlike things like HorrorCon and Comic-Con and things like that, where like the guests are sort of like behind a signing table and you've got to pay and queue up to meet, you've got to queue up and pay to meet them and get a picture and all of that stuff. Like, these author conventions and these more bookish things are just way more like relaxed, and like, you know, Mick Garris isn't behind 2 security guards and you've got to pay to go up and get a selfie with him. Like, you can just approach him and mingle with him in the bar or wherever he is. And like, or like Ramsey Campbell, that's where I first met Ramsey Campbell as well. And so when I saw the guests of honour, I thought it was going to be more like a Comic-Con setup, and then when I got there and realised, oh my god, I can just walk up to this guy, I just couldn't believe it. And I was thinking of all these questions that I wanted to ask him, all of these like smart questions about filmmaking and about the adaptation process and about like how he frames his shots. And I wanted to know, like, when he's adapting Stephen King specifically, like where his focus is and how he wants that represented in the sets. I had all of this stuff in my head, and instead I got to him and I just started talking about the critter ball from Critters 2, and that's all I came out with. And I was so excited and overwhelmed to be stood in front of him that I almost cried. And then he just, you know, he really was very kind. I have to say, writers are very kind people. But yeah, so that's my story of finally meeting a childhood idol, and I just basically cried about the critter ball. Moving on, so we are on my top spot now. I did already at the start of this video by telling you my favourite film is Aliens. So obviously that's top of the list, Aliens/Aliens, because I go back and forth of which one of those two is my top favourite. But basically they, for the sake of this, we're going to say they're in joint first place, because who cares exactly which place. Now Alien and Aliens are like excellent for like similar reasons in some regards and then different reasons in others. If you have somehow gone through life as a horror fan and a horror sci-fi fan and you haven't seen the original Alien and Aliens, like, stop whatever you're doing in life. If you're on your lunch break and work right now, just walk out of the office and go home and watch Alien. On the off chance that anyone watching this hasn't seen these films, very quickly, this is about a crew on a spaceship, and they're just like a crew of people that are up there for work, and being in space is very normal in this sort of like future and reality that we're in. And then they go down to a planet to check something out, and yes, basically an alien gets on board, and then, you know, cue absolute terror because confined space again. The like literally confined space, but like, yeah, there's nowhere to go, and also there's all of this other stuff that's at risk, you know, like if the alien, I don't know, gets into the wire, like, you know, there's all sorts of stuff you got to worry about. It's absolutely fantastic. The storytelling's brilliant. Like, they took their time like building the suspense. Like, there's like maybe like one jump scare, but it's like built up and earned. And also like the practical effects. This is one of the things that makes this film stand up so well against the test of time. It was made in like 78 or 79, and the practical effects are just unbelievable. Like, these aliens are so scary. Like, this alien, sorry, it's just one in the first one, so scary. And then in Aliens we have more aliens, more xenomorphs, and again, practical effects absolutely outstanding. And I like the thing is like this as well. John Carpenter's The Thing was all practical effects, and there's just, I would much rather watch like something that's been physically made and puppeteered, and then maybe years from now it won't look quite as good anymore. You'll be able to tell it's a puppet, right? But it's still going to age better than any CGI of the time. Like, Jurassic Park is another example of this, by the way, which I didn't put on this list. Mistake. But yeah, that's like a big thing. And so like, we've got like great protagonist, characters that are making decisions, like even when you don't agree with the decisions, like their motives are very clear and understandable, and like nothing feels like forced for the sake of the plot. The xenomorphs are scary as shit. They are like the ultimate horror film monsters. Can't imagine anything worse. I would rather fight anything else than a xenomorph, honestly. And yeah, just great location, like everything looks great. It's just wonderful. And then Aliens up to the ante, just more xenomorphs this time, and now we've got Ripley, the main character from Alien, with space marines that so we get like great performances from like people like Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen. These films are like perfection to me. Like, I've watched Alien and Aliens so many times and I just can't poke holes in them, and I'm someone who likes to poke a lot of holes. If you saw my rant about Alien Covenant, you'll see what I mean. Now, I personally, Alien 3, people are very, sorry, my cat's being insane. Alien 3, people are quite like very split on that, like the fan base. I would say Alien and Aliens, absolute top tier, and I don't think I've ever seen anything better. Alien 3, I like it for, there's a few versions, like a few different cuts of it, so depending on which one you see, that might sway you, but that's pretty good too. And then no matter what anyone says or anything you might see, nothing else exists in the Alien franchise, okay? Nothing. There's Alien Resurrection, who's she? No, I don't. Prometheus, Alien Covenant, I've never heard of them. Romulus, while I'll acknowledge it was the first one made since Aliens that actually looks like an alien movie, doesn't exist, okay? So yeah, just Alien and Aliens. Now, I did say I was going to throw in an honourable mention because there's something I left off the list, and because you knew that Alien was going to be my favourite, I would also like to briefly turn your attention to a film called Life. I don't see a lot of people talking about this one. This is similar in concept to Alien, which is probably why I like it so much, but it doesn't feel like, outside of the setting and that there's like a foreign body, which is like the case for a lot of these like space films, it doesn't really have like massive amounts of similarities, but I have seen people say it's like an Alien rip-off, but I think that that's an unfair thing to say. So this, oh no, I've forgotten all of the cast's names. Every single one. Rebecca, my pal Rebecca, John, and that guy. Anyway, that's not the point. So anyway, we've got a team that are in space, scientists, and they're people with various roles, and they find a life form. I think it's from Mars. I can't quite remember the specifics, but they take it aboard and it's locked up in this little lab, and they realise that it's not only responsive to stimuli, but they think it's intelligent, and they're really, really, really excited about it. Until it, you know, decides maybe it doesn't want to be enclosed anymore. And it's like, it's a great film, and we've got kind of like worrying about the crew, who might get killed and when, how they're going to be killed. They call the alien life form, by the way, Calvin, and it, like, when they bring it on board, it's like basically like a little, just like a cell, and it grows quite fast. But yeah, Calvin I thought was quite creative. We have like themes of you know, life and who has the right to life, and you know, should people come above any other life, and all of this kind of stuff. And then it's just really a great horror film set in a space station. It was so much fun, but the thing that I really, oh my god, like I tip my hat to it for, is that ending. I can't tell you because it's a massive spoiler. Oh man, some ballsy decisions were made and I loved it for that. What a great film. Okay, so what have I missed? Please, please, please enlighten me if I've missed something, like in the caliber of films that I personally think are the highest. Let me know if there's something that deserves to be in there that isn't in my top 10, something I may have forgotten, something I may not have seen. I would love to know what your top sci-fi horror movies are. And also, if you're someone that has a similar experience to me, where someone has tried telling you that your favourite film isn't the genre you say it is, I'd love those kinds of stories, because I could talk all day about annoying people that have, you know, disrespected Alien. I will see you in the next video. Bleed!